Hello, welcome to the Offshoot. I'm the host, Leishawn Nelson. We're going to continue our conversation regarding Karon Blake, the 13-year-old who was shot and killed by a neighbor here in Washington, D.C. That individual has since turned himself in. But there's been a lot of talk about the parents. What was his mom doing? Where was she? Where was his father? Things of that nature. So I thought it'd be best to have a parent sit next to me, a parent who had a child who was that 13-year-old at one point. And that parent is Miss Sarita Curtis. Sarita, how are you doing today?
Hi, how are you, Sean?
Good. Welcome to the Offshoot.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm really honored that you're taking the time out to talk about what it was like as a parent raising 3 children, but the oldest being one who was sometimes out and about at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., doing things that people assume were always negative, or because he had nothing else to do, or the parents weren't around, but that wasn't the case with you. So tell us about raising your kids and what it was like, and how did your son end up going down the path where you weren't able to keep him off the streets at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the mornings?
Well, it started when my apartment had caught on fire. We had lived over on Gainesville.
And this is in Southeast DC?
In Southeast DC, yes. So a friend of mine had recommended for me to go over to Benning Co-ops. She said, oh, that would be good. You can get on your feet. The rent was cheap. That's off of Benning Road. That's still Southeast. So I said, oh, okay. She said, 2 years escrow, you could take your money and go. Because at the time I wanted to get a house. So I said, okay. So I get over there. And I guess my first dead sign of the area should have been when I registered him for school. The staff, when I brought him in the office, which was Fletcher Johnson, the first thing she says to me after I said, I'm here to register my son, she says, well, what record does he have? At that time.
So how old was he at the time?
He was 12. He was 12, about 12, 13, because it started around at 13, because we had just got over it. And I said, record? He doesn't have a record.
So the first thing the teacher asks you when you try to enroll him to school?
This was the staff in the office.
The staff in the office,
yes. So I was kind of hurt because I was like, now I'm struggling to take care of a boy. He was always bad, but nothing like that. So I was like, he doesn't have a record. He never been to Oak Hill? No. I had taught him sports. He was good in sports and everything. Coaches were watching him and all that good stuff. So, okay, I register him. He gets there, goes to the school, and a couple of the coaches noticed how he was. So they were like, Mom.
They noticed how good he was with sports?
Yes, with sports and everything. So they was like, Mom, you did good. He wasn't an honor roll student. He was a B, C student. That was fine with me. No pressure.
And average is what most people are.
Exactly. So that was fine because all his life he had been in sports. That was the first thing. Me as a parent, I was in sports in school. So I implemented that in him. So we're there, and I noticed, he started meeting different people in the area, the different boys around the area.
And I'm assuming these are older boys in the area.
Well, no, some were young, some was his age. One was older, one particular one. He was like 15, 16. He had a look like he was 25. And I could remember walking in the house, seeing this guy in there, and I was like, why are you in my house? And who are you? And I couldn't believe he was 15. I even asked for his credentials at the time. So moving forward, they're together. And we're doing fine. He's doing good in school, nothing particular, outstanding, out of the way where I had to really come up there and do anything.
Yeah.
All of a sudden one night I get a call, and it was the Palmer Park police. And they said, ma'am, we have your son and this other gentleman. So I go over there and I get him. It was for a stolen car. And I'm like, Deontay, why? Because I was teaching him how to. That was my next agenda, because you're about to turn 15 close. Everything I was trying to show him so he'll be prepared. So, okay, I brushed it off. I said, okay, this one time. Don't let it happen again, and so forth. So next thing I know, he started coming in later for school. So I'm going through the motions like, you need to be here, because at the time I had my younger son, and it just got later and later, and I started worrying about the people who he was with. He had a job. My sister has a business, her and her husband, where all the kids in the family work. So on the weekend, there was no problem without him having money.
Yeah.
Whatever she paid him, I would give the other half of that. So that was, he had everything he needed. There was no reason. Going down the line, months later, next thing I know, he's just all of a sudden out there. I'm coming home from work. He's not there. I had to end up putting my son in daycare so I could make it, pick him up, because he had him with him at the time.
Deontay had his younger brother.
With him at the time. I found out later that he had him in a couple of the cars too. So that was a lot to me. So here I am, I'm in court. And I want to say the first court, because Deontay has been in the DMV system with this. I mean, it has gone way over. It wasn't nothing like I was the mom. We went to the movies. We did son and mom day. I would take him and his friends to do things. Cousin, we did everything. He's been out of the country. You name it, he's done it. So
as a teenager.
As a teenager, you're 13 and you've been out of the country several times. Probably by 13, he's been to Florida about 8 times. Disney and everybody else still trying to get there. So at that time, I just couldn't understand the logic, what he was thinking.
So because you were doing what you thought were typical parental things,
right,
by taking him out of the country, taking him to trips to Disney World, giving him access to what is actually available in DC, or was available in DC at the time,
right,
but still he was getting this outside influence that you weren't aware of.
Right, exactly. He started hanging in the area with over different people, the guy's house. So,
and this is all around Benning Road, Southeast.
Yes, in that area, in the Simple City area. That's where he basically was. It got concerning. So by him having my younger son with him, I was like, where is he? Whose house is he over? So I'm asking my younger son, who was 4 at the time, Curtis. I was like, look, where's your brother? Do you know where he is? So Curtis tells me yes. And of course, he starts walking me up through the shortcut of the woods. I was like, no, baby, we not going that way. Take me through the actual way to the person's house. So we get up there, and of course, they say he wasn't there, but he had been there. At that time, it was between 10 to 15 kids in that neighborhood that were running away from home and stealing cars. Then they were taking minivans, and they would go to the different schools in the area, out Maryland or wherever, and the kids were getting robbed of clothes. So here I'm home, I'm like chasing him. He wasn't coming in, he started not coming home. I would sit up in the window, literally, like people didn't have a clue what I was going through. I'm like, what could I do? So I'm in the courts, and every time I went to the courts, I would recommend a program that I knew of. And the only reason why I knew of some of the programs, because by working where I work at, we license a lot of the charitable organizations. So I looked into that with that, and then they would refer me, or I would talk to somebody that knew of a program for him. We've even gone as far as, I said, okay, well, if he's still in cars, let me put him in the program. We figured take him up to UDC, has a mechanic certification program.
That's the University of District of Columbia.
Yes, and one of the former Redskins player has a schooling to be a mechanic. So we took him up there, and he got tested, and he went a little bit, and next thing I know, he stopped going. And I found that out on the humble, because then the police would call and tell me we chased Deontay, or either they had gotten caught. They were terrible. They were, I had to get to him. Like, it was wearing me down as a parent. And
this is happening over a few years.
Yes, this happens from the age of 13 till he actually turned 18 and got his first bid, which it was a 10-year bid, in which he was facing 60 to 80 years at that time.
Wow.
So this went on. I mean, it got to the courts. It got so hectic at the courts where the lawyers were like, because what I was making, I couldn't afford a public defender. Said I made too much. So then they were like, Miss Curtis, they were showing me his file. You can't afford our sir. Don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. They'll just go ahead and defend him. The police, they knew how I was. They were like, Mom, what you want us to do?
Yeah.
Some of them would go in there and literally just make up a story so he wouldn't get arrested, or just go home and
So, in other words, the police were actually helping you by not telling the truth in court, so that they can give Deontay a second or third chance.
Yes.
And because of your income at the time, you were kind of caught in the middle because you made too much money to qualify for certain things, but too little money for other things.
Right. And so where that came in, whenever they did these car thefts, I had to pay for certain things, some things that happened. And a lot of people think, oh no, get the car fixed. Well, these people want their money, their vehicle.
They want compensation for the vehicle damage.
I remember one person sending something, and the guy had just got his truck, $26,000. I don't have $26,000 to give you. Mm-hmm. So not only that, I had to pay. Sometimes the kids that had gotten robbed knew who he was. Mm-hmm. So I had to pay for their clothing that was stolen. Yeah. So it just became more and more. So they were, and what's so crazy, because I worked, they would sneak in the house while I'm not home and eat up food. And I could tell when they came because they've been missing for 2 or 3 days. So you know they ain't took no bath or anything, so I can smell it. So I'm like, something got to give. And it was wearing me out to where I was mentally like exhausted. Yeah. I ended up going to the doctors, and I had to get some medication just to sleep, because every sound of a car, I was in my window looking like, God knows, like, what's going on? Is this him? Mm-hmm. And what about Deontay's father in all of this? So me and his father had separated. We were married. We had divorced. And they were going through it. So them two weren't connected. Deontay and his father were just having issues between the two of them? Yes. They had issues between the two, so it wasn't working well with them two. But he was being notified of it as well. Deontay wasn't listening. I don't even think Deontay would have listened to him, even still, because Deontay's mind was, I'm going to do what I want to do. This is what I want to do. Do you think the divorce, the separation, was having an impact on him emotionally and physically? Some of it did. He did mention that. That did play a part. At one point when me and him was talking, he said, Mom, you only could do but so much. I need a man in my life. So I'm like, I'm not about to go out here and deal with a whole bunch so you could do that. So in my mind, I said, let's do programs. Yeah. And I even went to the program with the brother to brother program, and it was always where it wasn't enough men available. Yeah. So as a young boy, as a teenager, he was telling you he needed a man in his life. Exactly. As a young boy, that's pretty good foresight for a young kid to know what he wants, what he needs. Yeah. We always, one thing about me and him, we'll talk just like when he was going through all this. And I would always ask him before, because it got to a point where I didn't want to hear what the, police say. Some would be honest, some would not. So I said, tell me, what did you do when you did this crime? I need to know so I can mentally prepare myself walking in. Because it, like I said, it comes to a point where you're numb. And here I'm looking for him. Like, I'm literally, some of these parents had him at their house. And I had to kind of take grips of myself. And I said, I'm going to make him uncomfortable. Let's talk about that for a second, because you said there are other parents who were basically enablers. Exactly. And this kind of goes to the community as a whole. Yes. So the community at the time, of course, was around Benning Road. Okay. And this is not to knock Benning Road. Right. Benning Road is actually a very nice road. There are very nice homes along Benning Road on both sides of the river. Yes. So it's not all bad, is what we're trying to say. No. But in this case, at this time, the community
was not 100% there, and there were some parents, not all, who were enabling Deontay's behavior, and they were actually working against you, is what you're saying, right?
Yes. They would have all of them, even other kids, spending the night, and this is on school nights.
Mm-hmm.
You got 10, 12 kids on the floor sleeping at your place. And I'm looking for my son. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's gotten shot, because some of the kids felt my pain because their parents did not give them the love they have. So they would literally call me and say, Miss Cece, Deontay is at so-and-so house. They there now. And I would send the police.
Mm-hmm.
And I had asked one of the parents, I said, I know you have something in this house that you don't want them to come check. Keep my son out your house. That's all I'm asking you. I don't care how you raise your own. My son has a future, and I'm trying to get him back. And so that didn't stop. And he continued in the parents. So I remember one night, the night that I went to the doctors, I'm driving from the hospital because I had to get some medicine, calm myself down. And I had my son in the back seat, Curtis, in his chair.
The younger son.
Mm-hmm. And I'm driving, and as I pull up close near my house, I'm at an intersection. Well, I'm on this side of the intersection, and there's this minivan on the other side. Who was it that I see? My own child.
Deontay.
And I'm like, what the? He is really driving. So
and how old was he about this time?
About 14. Mm-hmm. He was about 14 or something like that.
Joyriding in someone else's vehicle that he probably...
This was like 12, 1 o'clock at night.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't just him. It was filled up with other kids, too, that was in the van. So he saw me, I saw him, and we both hit the gas. I chased him through the neighborhood, and he dipped off, and I said, oh, he must don't know his mom. So I came back around the block, and I chased him again. So then he heads down this alley off of Chapel Street over in Southeast where we live. And it's a two-way alley. Mm-hmm. I said, now he really going to take me like I don't know what this alley. Okay, but by the time I turned around, my son, I had drove so recklessly, Curtis had flipped over in his chair. Mm. So he went one way in the alley. I was like, Lord, let me go home because I'm about to hurt my baby. I'm going to kill this boy. I'm going to kill him. So I'm going to kill him. So I was like,
I mean, I hate to laugh, but it really is something that
I can laugh now, but...
You see your 14-year-old son in a stolen vehicle, and he sees you, and he leads you on a car chase in a stolen vehicle.
Exactly.
With other kids in the van.
Yes, he did. And that was so crazy. I was like, I don't believe he did that to me. He didn't get out, anything. He just... I said, okay, that was the last of it. You're going to play I'm going to make you so uncomfortable till you're not going to be able to stay wherever you are. Mm-hmm. And so the more I started communicating, the kids started talking. I started calling different ones, learning who's mom. I remember going over another mom's house who lived in Maryland. And I had just got there, and the mom was like, oh, yeah, because she had a daughter. And I said, well, I knew she was one of the kids that was involved in the stolen car stuff. So I said, okay. I'm sitting there, and she's talking to me like, I don't understand why they do this. And like she's totally against it, not knowing she had company. So this guy, I'm looking at these pair of shoes, and I'm like, those look like my son's shoes. But I'm not saying it to her. I'm just listening to her talking. I'm like, those are my son's shoes. And so this guy comes out the back, and he's like, tell that lady where her son is. He was cussing. He was cursing a lot. That, ma'am, he just left here. You just missed him in the stolen car. Him and some other guys, and those his shoes right there. And I'm like... So
again, another example of a parent in the community who was blocking you from trying to get to your son.
Yes. My understanding, he was telling me at the time they were doing chop shops. And so he would take stuff, and of course they would take it to the chop shop. Mm-hmm. He was getting money for it and splitting among the group. And that was another thing too. So I couldn't understand how could the chop shops,
Yeah.
but that's what they do.
So what do you say to people who think that the parent or parents should be held accountable or more accountable when their teenage son or preteen is out there breaking into cars, stealing cars, or doing other things? Should parents be held more accountable? Should they be looking at jail time or some kind of action?
No, because you really don't know. Like people, I went to work and I'm still smiling. You don't know what that parent is actually going through. I've even had it set up where me and him was in counseling, separate and together, to get a better understanding. I went far and beyond. So until you know that person's situation, the kids react off of things they see around. They feel love when they need to feel love, when they think love is given.
Yeah.
But no, not all parents are like that. No, not all parents go ahead and say, you can hang out. Because I didn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't one of those. He had the audacity to tell me why I wasn't like the other parents. What parents? No. You need to be in here at a certain time.
Yeah.
So because the people he hung with were able to do that, that's what he felt like.
Yeah, but what about those parents who, like in this other example you gave, who was blocking you from getting to your son? I'm assuming that parent had a kid of her own.
Okay. She did.
Okay, and I'm assuming that her kid was out there doing things as well. Okay, but she was okay with that. Maybe she was getting some kind of benefit from that. So you don't think that she should have been held accountable in some kind of way?
To a degree, like you need to take steps with these parents, because some of them start them off probably with counseling, sitting in groups. They need to feel. I remember going to this one group when Deontay was in Maryland court, and this black guy, I wish I could remember because he was great. He said he had seen me come into the court several times. So he had this group where he was like, I need you to come here. Because Maryland didn't have at that time, doesn't have programs like that for the kids.
Yeah.
So his program consisted of everybody meeting. So you would have the kids on one side of the room, the parents on the other, the police there, and that way everybody gets heard.
Yeah.
And it kind of worked. It did work for mine, because I had another child, which I had taken custody of. So that way you can hear the pain of what each going through. Sometimes your child is doing things out of anger, or peer pressure, because that's more probably than anything, because everybody trying to be like the Joneses. And what I mean is you want to fit in, but you don't know how. And sometimes it's not for you to fit in, because you are your own person.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you different. If you're doing something already positive and negative, you might have 10 friends that are doing something negative. I guarantee you, out of that 10, 2 at least will follow you.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters. But the parents probably need to have some programming or counseling with their kids, because it got to be something deeper within them for you to even think that's acceptable.
Yeah.
It's far beyond me.
But what about the situation like with Karon Blake? It's been said, and I don't know if this is actual facts or not, but this is kind of hearsay, if you will, or third party, that Karon Blake's mother said at one point that as a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, Karon was the man of the house. Okay, now
that's pressure.
Okay, that's my point. My question: can a 12-year-old be the man of a house? Can a 13-year-old be the man of a house?
We say that, and I've done it too. And so you have to kind of be careful. I mean, you make them the man of the house because you might have younger kids and his things, you might need him there to do this. But you're not explaining what the man of the house is, because sometimes they'll leap. They won't jump. When you say the man of the house, they're going to take what you say, and that means everything. You need to go into details. What do you mean? Like, I need you to clean up, or I need you to do this. Don't go overboard when you say the man of the house. We call ourselves trying to prepare them, but I don't think sometimes when you say that, you let them know exactly what it is.
So, in other words, if you could do it over again, you would not tell Deontay to be the man in the house, but you'll frame it differently.
Yes.
By giving him responsibilities.
Yes.
Okay, and letting him be a 12 or 13-year-old, 14-year-old, without taking on that mantle of man in the house. Because when I hear that, I think of a parent telling a young black boy that he has to be an alpha male, okay, and that he has to do whatever it takes, illegal or legal, to ensure the protections of his family in that household.
Right, and that's how some of them see it.
Yeah.
If you don't clarify and go and explain, that's how they see it sometimes. Because, most teenagers can't wait to be a man. So for you to put in that perspective, say, hey, be the man of the house, some of them take it that far.
Yeah.
Some of them do.
So what would you want people to know about what it's like to be a parent who has a 10-year-old, 13-year-old, 15-year-old, 17-year-old who is out there breaking into cars, who's going on joyrides, who's working with these chop shops, if you will? What can the community do for a parent that was in your situation, or what can the community do today for parents right now? What can our city government do? What do you recommend?
Like I was telling you, I feel like a lot of the programs that the schools had, they have taken away the ones that were important. I remember when they had in school, we used to have life skill classes. It taught you how to do resume, prepare for a job, all the stuff that you face in life. I'm wondering whatever happened to Martha Washington School, who taught nursing, because it seems like now, like a lot of the kids, they don't get these trade trainings. You gotta wait till you come out, create a college bill or a trade school bill, when they could do it while they're there, get some of the credit for it, and probably go work in a shop part-time, especially when you get to the 12th grade or something like that.
So you think vocational training is what's missing?
It is, because a lot of kids don't have that training. They don't learn how to operate a cash register. They don't get taught how to open an account and save money. Even if it's $5 or $10, you can have a class on banking, and maybe they can go work in a bank once they get out, if that's the field they're interested in. You had Armstrong that had accounting classes and things of that nature. You took the things away that was important to the kids, the community that would help the kids. And it doesn't make sense. I don't understand that logic. We save the budget, but I see all this stuff getting built.
Yeah.
So what about the other?
Well, you said you see the budget, but you see other things being built, but things not being built in your community.
Exactly. Okay. Yes. Well, I live in Maryland now, but at the time when I moved over, I've lived in every area of DC.
And mind you, so correct me if I'm wrong, this is with Dante. This is all happening in the 2000s.
Yes.
And so this is the early 2000s. So for those of you who don't know, DC kind of began its boom, if you will, I'm going to say in the early 2000s, and the city has been growing and transforming since then. And so to Sarita's point, money, budgets have been allocating funds to other things in the city, like downtown, the Navy Yard, the District Wharf, as opposed to vocational programs in Southeast DC or other programs that will help keep kids off the street. So am I saying that correctly? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, in other words, I think what we're trying to say here is that funds need to be reallocated back to the programs that were in Southeast DC, Northeast DC, wards 5, 7, and 8. No, you find where kids were getting vocational training, where they were getting access to rec centers, etc. Right?
But I feel like they need to put them in the schools.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. This is
in
live.
the school. Yes, I'm sorry. They need to put it in the school. Start them in the school. Don't wait till they get out in the community, because you got to keep them focused.
Yeah.
So if they started in school and it's out in the community, then they're going to continue. Even if it's 10 people that attend a class, maybe 5 will continue on, because that's the life. They see the good in what's being done.
Yeah.
And they see it makes them better.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, another thing I feel also with parents that, excuse me,
Take
a
your
lot
time.
of times, us as Black people, we don't want to go to counseling. Parents, if you love, I know we all love our kids, but sometimes that counseling helps that child.
Yeah.
It sometimes take it out of, it's not all about you. Excuse me.
Take your time.
It's about that child.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I went, because I said I needed answers.
Yeah.
I needed answers. So when we did go to counseling, it helped me a whole lot to better understand what he felt, how he felt about me. Sometimes even just having a oh, I'm sorry.
You want anything to drink or water or anything?
Sure, I'm fine. So even like sometimes parents have other kids, have a baby that could change things. Deontay was just very adamant. He said he just wanted to go against everything that I said.
Just to be going against you no matter what. Yeah.
No matter what.
No real rhyme or reason. He just wanted to just go against you no matter what.
Yeah,
it was just straight up rebellion no matter what.
And I advise y'all to get a hold of your kids now, because what happened in the long run, he ended up, I can't even remember. They did a chase. So his cousin was in a transition home. They went in, he jumped the fence, and they got out and stole some more cars. They had a big chase and everything, and they caught him down on Southern Avenue. I remember the officer, like sometimes in the police chases, the officers would be on the phone with me, telling me, Miss Curtis, I got him. He going down Benny Road. He on the sidewalk. Like they giving me play by play.
Yeah.
And it was hard. So by this time, he's on the run. And the officer that was chasing him this particular day when they finally caught him had me on the phone. And I'm listening to him literally chase Deontay, which he had gotten caught up by simple sitting. And so once they caught him, he went in. And I remember them calling me what do they call it at the courts? I can't even think right now because it's so much. They end up catching him, and they took him down, and someone from the courts called and said, he's facing a lot of years. So keep in mind, they had went over jurisdiction from Maryland to D.C. So he's got to face the court in D.C. So what D.C. did was they dropped it and let Maryland take it because the bulk of everything was there. So we go to the Maryland courts, and then the Maryland courts called me and they said, well, he's facing 60 to 80 years. He had 3 counts, and they had broken down 3 charges. They had broken down each charge with 10 to 15 counts. So at least something was going to stick. He had carjacking, armed robbery, so much. It was like 15 police cars had chased them. It was the whole shebang. And then they weren't going to release him. And of course, they did a bond. The bond was in the millions. So of course,
Wow.
I couldn't afford that. And then I was like, even if I did, no, I wouldn't even attempt to try to pay anything. I went through it. Like, why would you do this so much and you had everything there? Yeah, it might be problems, but you could get over them. We could work them through. I think kids are sometimes forced to deal with situations that they can't handle.
Too early.
And the parents assuming because what we did, they have a lot now as opposed to what we had then. So we didn't have all this social media and, you know, the games and things like that, you know, you got to compare and try to get an iPhone and so forth. I didn't do that with my kids. When I got them a phone, I got them something small. I built them up.
Yeah.
Give them some, see how they take care of something first, and we move up to as you grow older.
Yeah.
So you'll take care of it and appreciate it. But he was facing those years. One of my nephews, Damon, he was like, he can't do that type of time. He can't do it. We got to find him a paid lawyer. I had been dealing with this lawyer through a family off and on and friends. So the lawyer was like, it was $30,000. I didn't have $30,000, but he said because I had helped him out along the way, he charged $15,000.
Which is still a lot.
It's still a lot. So, you know, family helped to put up the funds. So I did that. He ended up giving him 15. No, so they did do 30 years. They suspended 15. So he ended up doing 15 years. But he did, out of the 15, he did 10. And so that's how he ended up doing that whole long time. That's when he got 18. So it never stopped.
Yeah.
He was just constantly going, and I couldn't, you know, it was like, what?
And that's so basically that jail time's what stopped him.
For a minute. And then he got out after that, and he stayed out for like 9 months and ended up going back in. Because the fact of the matter was, he didn't have anything available for him. So when he got out, I remember the parole people coming to the house. The guy never got out the car. I took off for work so he could talk. I went in the house and I looked out there and I said, hey, you know, are you coming in? Come on. And he said, wait a minute. So I waited another 10 minutes and I go back out. He's gone. So the guy never came and said anything. So when I called him the next day and I'm asking him, you know, how are you setting up his home arrangements? Are you having him set up for programs? You know, I know all this stuff because I used to work for corrections. So that was another thing I couldn't understand because I used to tell Deontay the horror stories of corrections, and it was like, that just went out the window.
It didn't deter.
Yeah. And the gentleman told me, the parole guy told me, said, well, I can't set anything up for him because he's not a Baltimore resident. Huh? So pretty much wherever we live, or when he came home, I was the one forced to look for programs and put him in certain things.
Yeah.
A lot of times, I feel like we have a lot of these programs out here in DC. They have a lot. And some of you people need to be down at the courts. Just like that gentleman, he said he goes to the courts because he saw how they do the black males. And he tries to grab them in.
So it's systemic.
Yes.
So, and of course, we all know that when it comes to the judicial system in this country, not just DC, there are things that are systemic, and it goes back for centuries, and nothing has changed since then. I'm going to go out there to say that not much has changed since slavery. It's just in a different verbiage, basically, in terms of how specifically black men have been looked upon and judged when it comes to certain elements of society. I'm not saying that all black men are perfect. People do need to be put in jail. You do the crime, you do the time. Okay, and we have to hold people accountable. But again, there are some things that are systemic, and this is an example. The system basically kind of kept you down as well, because you were trying to buy a house in the very beginning, and you could not because of all the court fees and what have you that you had to put out.
I had to pay court fees for just a lot of things in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So people really didn't know what I was going through at the time because I'm blessed at that time for the supervisor that I had, because I spent more time at the courts than anything. You know, you spend more time anytime you go down the court building and the staff there look at you, say, you here again?
Yeah.
Girl, we need to put you in office down here. Oh my goodness. Is it that bad? Yes. We
Wow.
see you a lot. It got to a point where I would set up lunch dates with some of my girlfriends that I worked with because I was down there so much.
Wow.
It's just a lot.
Well, let's end this on a positive note. I hope that you all took something away from this conversation, and I do want to end on something positive in terms of Deontay is better now, and he's continuing working himself. Okay, you have a great career. You're working within the government. Okay, and she's getting married. Okay, so let's. What can you say to end this conversation? Something positive about what we can do as a community, as a whole, as a city, Washington D.C., to basically help everyone. Because I feel like if we help these young black men in Washington D.C., that helps everyone in D.C., no matter your ethnic background or where you come from. So we got to help each other, and in helping, I think these young black men, it's going to end up helping everyone throughout the whole city. Okay.
Well, I would say this. One, parents, please grab your kids because it's a fighting battle for them. It really, really is. Just a conversation, sitting down, it's okay. We're not saying you can't be their friend, but know the line right there as the parent and the friend. Me and Deontay can talk about anything. Mm-hmm. And it's all, even through the situation, it's been like that. But the city needs to get a hold. I really want the people who are in these programs to show up and go down that court building to see how many of these kids are down there. Mm-hmm. And grab them when they're coming out the door right there. Not just wait till they go down Oak Hill. I even been down Oak Hill, and all that. And they have like one or two programs that a program that would come down there and talk. But some of the, stuff these kids are going through are deeper. And stop assuming that we know. Start it in high school for them. Parents, whatever it is that helps them, sign off on it, let them do it. These officials, I just need you to get it together and to build these things. And if people are coming up with programs that benefits them, sometimes I need the counselors in the school to stand up. If they see that they need counseling or something further, then do that. I remember one school my son went to, it was Maya Angelou in East Capitol. That was a pretty good school. Even though where it was at, that school started off very good and it was beneficial. They even had things going on through the summer. I even had, the counselors, it was a lot of guys from college that worked at. So they grabbed the hold of the men there. Even when he was in elementary school, and these the people I need, these teachers and counselors to come out and be accountable. My youngest son was going through something because his brother had gotten locked up. And I'm trying to figure it out. I'm doing whatever I can. I'm keeping him close to me. And one of the teachers said, he was a counselor or something, like, he said, can I talk to your son? I just want permission. Because I watch him and I see him. He's a very bright young individual. And Curtis, the honors roll. That's the youngest one. He was on honor rolls in school and so forth. So I said, sure, not knowing what exactly. He said he had saw the change and stuff. So when he talked to him, he figured out that was the issue. His brother was locked up and he was going through it. So they had it at the school. It was a program for kids that had incarcerated parents or family members or whatever it was. So he got into the program and it helped. It really helped because he was so angry all the time. Yeah. And to be 7 and 8 years old, to be angry like you were at 5, it was amazing. It was just too much.
Wow. Well, there you have it, everyone. So let's be proactive. Let's reach out to our city council members, to our mayor, even to the president of the United States, and ask them, tell them, demand from them that we need funding for our communities, especially our most vulnerable communities. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to this particular episode of The Offshoot. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That's the offshoot.org as well, where you find more content. That's www.theoffshoot.org. And of course, The Offshoot on YouTube. So thank you for watching, subscribe, and check us out again for another episode of The Offshoot.